Some more thoughts about Mario 64. Some more thoughts about Mario 64. Um, there's a thing I want to try and brush out, like I was a painter or something. I want to try and draw this canvas. It has to do with the moon and the rabbit. So in a previous video, I was speaking about how it seems to me that at least in Japanese folklore, and I think maybe according to Wikipedia, it was in East Asia generally, there's this folkloric idea of the rabbit being associated with the moon. I'm not sure exactly in what way. I'm afraid I haven't researched that too much. But I know that the rabbit and the moon are kind of interchangeable symbols in a way. Let's assume they are for this purpose. And because of this, I was thinking, well, that kind of means that the rabbits down in the basement of Mario 64 are associated with a round white thing, a sphere, a white sphere, or a brilliant, yellowy, sort of gloomy sphere that floats up in the sky, right? So the rabbit is associated to this globe of white, brilliant kind of light that floats in the sky that we call the moon. If that is so, that sort of association between the rabbits and the moon kind of makes them similar in shape, somehow, to the idea of a ghost, as it is understood in Mario 64, as also being a round, spherical, white thing that floats, right? So the ghosts on the second floor, the first floor, I guess, and the rabbits on the basement, if we associate the rabbit with the moon, could bring to mind the idea of a round spherical object that floats in the sky and is ghostly and brilliant and emanates a certain kind of light in a way. That's one thing, right? We could flesh that idea a little more out, flesh it out, if we said, well, and I think, and again, I may be incorrect, I don't really want to research this yet, but it's just intuitive sort of feeling that this idea of, I think it is called the Jade Rabbit, this association between the rabbit and the moon, I think ends up being associated with Buddhism as well. I'm pretty sure I've heard the expression the Jade Rabbit and its association to the moon being expressed in Buddhist writings here and there. I think. I was reading the writings of Dogen, a Zen Buddhist, recently, and I think he does mention the Jade Rabbit as an image here and there. And, of course, Buddhism uses the image of the moon in a lot of other ways that are kind of associated to vision, I think, right? You see the moon reflected in the pond. And that aspect of reflection of the moon, I think, serves as a metaphor, at least that's how I understand it, right? That there is a way in which the moon understood as something slightly untenable, that you see its reflection, but you don't fully grasp the full object of the moon itself. Kind of associates it with vision, and a sort of a fleeting vision that doesn't quite cover the full extent of what is being reflected in some way. Okay, before getting too lost into that stuff, I feel like just this cursory sort of overview of these themes connects in my mind to what the boos are doing in the first floor, the ground floor, because the boos are also associated to vision. They are something fleeting in a way, right? They are kind of like a reflection on a pond in that if you try to grab it, you can't, right? Because it's just a reflection, but there is a way to grab them. If you look at the boos, they disappear. So there is something ephemeral about them, and that ephemerality has something to do with vision. Okay, So we got that out of the way. Another thing I wanted to say about the castle overall that might connect with this in the end is the cake. So the whole game, in a sense, has as its object going and eating some cake. That's the whole idea. You're going to go to the castle and you're going to have a slice of cake with Peach and maybe the toads. I don't know, right? Now, a few things. Where could we go with this? The cake, therefore, is sort of... That's what your main activity... I mean, let's get this out of the way because it's on my mind. The cake is round. I mean, everything's round, right? It's a very common sort of shape, so it's no surprise that a cake is round. But you could make a square cake. Now, actually, is it? Yes, okay, I needed to check that. The cake is round and has a star on top, signaling the center of the cake. Again, it's not an unusual thing to do, right? To have a round object that's decorated with a central sort of figure. I mean, a Christmas tree is kind of like that as well. But of course, that's something that appears in this game several times, which makes me a little bit intrigued as to its meaning as a symbol, because where the boos hang out, we've got that symbol. There's this little round fountain area, and in the center of it there is a star. Right, that's one example of this. Let me see. Okay, yeah, so there are examples of this in the game, of not a sphere, but a round shape, and then the central area of that shape being a star. The cake is what you were originally going to get in this game. The game is, in a sense, a series of distractions. You might even say like optical illusions or something that take you in other directions that are not the direction of having some cake with Peach. In fact, Peach isn't even visible, right? She's become invisible. She's become hidden into the walls of the castle and becomes visible at the very end. And that's when you actually go to this, what seems to be a special room, because this image shows a room that we haven't seen anywhere in this game. There seems even to be a fireplace at the end or something. It's a room that's much more intricately decorated, obviously, than any room in the game, because it's like a purely just CGI pre-rendered image. And that's kind of weird, right? Because it's a room that you haven't visited in this castle. You seem to have visited every nook and cranny of the castle, and yet the cake is sort of represents access to an area of the castle that you hadn't even entered into before, kind of thing.